In the immensity of the Savanna, where the sun draws long shadows on the golden grass, once reigned a majestic lion, known as Mwezi. He was the undisputed king of his territory, a titan with the fur of a deep gold, his eyes burning with a bright light. But death is a shadow that even the most powerful cannot avoid. When Mwezi was shot by time, the disease fell on the land he once protected. As if nature itself mourned the loss of its guardian, a strange epidemic began to affect the other lions of the troop. The first to get sick was his brother, Jabari. He began to cough, his thin sides trembling under a non-existent wind. His eyes, once bright, gradually died out, consumed by a fatigue that nothing could soothe. The other lions watched helplessly the slow degeneration of their clan. A creeping fever took hold of them one by one. Their roars, once full of strength and pride, turned into muffled complaints. The Savanna itself seemed silent, as if frozen in anticipation of an inevitable destiny. The elders said that a dead king left behind an invisible imprint, a void that the earth itself struggled to fill. Without Mwezi, the breath of life seemed to have been sucked from this corner of the world. Prey was rare, hyenas laughed louder, daring to venture on the lands that were once forbidden to them. Over the moons, the disease continued its work, relentless. It was not a simple physical scourge, but a deeper suffering, a mourning engraved in the flesh and soul of the lions. The troop slowly faded, crumbling like a stone eaten by time. But while everything seemed lost, a young lion, still too inexperienced to be king, stood up. His name was Sefu, and although he did not have the power of his father, he had inherited his will. In a last breath of hope, he decided to lead the survivors to a new horizon, a territory where death would no longer hover over them like a curse. Sefu advanced through the Savanna in the company of the last survivors of the troop. Their walk was slow, marked by fatigue and suffering. The young lion could feel the weight of mourning weigh on his shoulders, but he had no right to falter. The death of his father, Mwezi, was not only the end of a reign, it was an ordeal, a brutal transition that demanded an heir worthy of carrying the legacy of the missing king. The nights were cold, colder than they had ever been. The lions, once proud and powerful, stamped against each other to look for a little warmth. The disease continued its work insidiously. Some didn't wake up in the morning. Others still opened their eyes, but their bodies no longer followed. Sefu observed this with a mixture of sadness and anger. Why was nature so fierce on them? One evening, while they were camping near an abandoned water point, a figure appeared in the mist, an old lioness, with gray fur and eyes shining like stones under the moon. It was Nia, the healer of the troop, an ancient who had lived more seasons than no lion could count. Sefu, she whispered as she approached. Nia, what should I do? Asked the young lion, his voice broken by worry. The old lioness watched him at length before answering. The dead never really leave us? Mwezi is still here around you, but you look for its traces in the dust while it is in your blood. If the disease eats away at your clan, it's not a punishment, it's an ordeal, a rebirth. Sefu frowned. But how to save them? We are weak, we no longer have strength. Nia put her paw on her forehead, an almost maternal gesture. Look at the stars. What do you see? Sefu looked up at the sky. Between the moving shadows of the clouds, the stars shone, immutable. They sparkle, as if they were whispering. They whisper, listen to them. They will guide you to the source. The next day, Sefu took the lead of the group, guided by a new force, a certainty that burned in him. He followed the stars, crossed the dry plains, along the dry rivers, and after days of wandering, he finally found what Nia had promised him, a still green land, a preserved territory, where the water flowed clear, and where the buffaloes grazed in abundance. It was a sanctuary, a place of rebirth. The lions settled there, and little by little, the disease was erased. The memory of Mwezi remained engraved in the hearts, no longer as a pain, but as a light. And when years later, a powerful roar resounded through the Savanna, the beasts raised their heads, because it was not an ordinary roar. The seasons passed, and under the reign of Sefu, the new land prospered. The lions regained their strength, and the disease that gnawed them was only a distant memory. Yet, despite this rebirth, a shadow persisted in the heart of the young king. Every night, he dreamed of a figure lurking in the mist, a huge lion, whose eyes shone like embers. He felt his presence all around him, in the wind, in the whispers of the night, and sometimes, in his own reflection when he leaned over the water. Mwezi, his father, was not at peace. Sefu understood that until he had completed the last duty of a son towards his king, his mind would wander between the worlds, unable to reach the ancestors. One night, when the moon bathed the Savanna in a spectral glow, he left the security of his new territory and undertook one last journey, to return to where his father had fallen. The road was long and full of pitfalls. The hyenas had taken possession of the clan's ancient territories, and their mocking laughter resounded in the darkness. But Sefu was not afraid. He walked without stopping, until he reached the plain where Mwezi had taken his last breath. The ground was different. The grass was duller, almost dead. As if the earth itself refused to heal, Sefu advanced slowly, and knelt where his father had collapsed. "Father, I'm back. Tell me what I have to do?" An icy wind blew on the plain. The silence was broken by a distant rumble, a deep roar that seemed to come from the bowels of the earth itself. Then, the mist rose, and Mwezi appeared. It was no longer a line of flesh and blood, but a figure made of shadow and light, his flaming gaze piercing the darkness. "My son, you brought life back to our clan. But there is one last ordeal left." "What test?" Sefu asked, his heart beating. "The king does not rest until his throne is soiled. As long as those who have soiled this land live without fear of justice." Sefu understood. He got up, his claws sinking into the ground. Hyenas. They had taken advantage of Mwezi's death to take control of the territory. They laughed in the night, feasted on the lands that they had not conquered by force, but by cowardice. It was time to restore his father's honor.